The heavy iron gates of the Volkov estate groaned open, but the barrel of a suppressed Glock pressed against my spine was louder. "One scream and your blood paints the gravel," the guard hissed. I didn't scream. I didn't even flinch. I watched the silhouette of a man standing on the limestone balcony, the tip of his cigar glowing like a dying star in the midnight fog. This was Viktor Volkov, the butcher of the East Side and the only person my sister feared more than the devil himself. My sister Clara was currently 3 miles away, clinking champagne glasses in the penthouse that used to be mine, wearing the grandmother's heirloom emeralds she'd stepped over my unconscious body to steal. I hadn't come here to plead for my life. I had come to offer Victor the one thing his billions couldn't buy, the kill codes to the fortune Clara thought she'd secured. 6 hours ago I was the CEO of Thorn Global. Now I was a ghost with a bruised rib and a flash drive hidden in the lining of my boot. Clara hadn't just taken the money, she'd erased my existence, filing a death certificate while I was drugged in the back of a black SUV. She'd always been the delicate twin, the one who needed protection, while I built an empire from the dirt up. I thought I was protecting her. Instead, I was sharpening the knife she eventually buried in my back. If I stayed in the shadows, I was dead by morning. If I joined the wolf at the door, I might just live long enough to watch Clara lose everything. The guards shoved me into a room that smelled of expensive leather and gun oil. Viktor Volkov didn't turn around. He stayed at the window, his broad shoulders casting a shadow that swallowed the floor. "The Thorn sisters are famous for their etiquette," he rasped, his voice like sandpaper on silk. "But here you are, uninvited, smelling of the gutter." I spat a mouthful of blood onto his Persian rug. "Clara is the one with the etiquette," I said, my voice steady despite the rattling in my chest. "I'm the one with the offshore keys. She's currently trying to move the first 50 million. She'll fail." I locked the accounts the second the needle hit my arm. Victor turned. His eyes were the color of a frozen lake, devoid of anything resembling mercy. He walked toward me, each step measured and heavy. He stopped inches away, his height forcing my head back. He reached out, his thumb tracing the jagged cut on my lip Clara's ring had left behind. "You want me to kill her?" he asked. I leaned into his touch, my eyes locking onto his. "No. I want you to make me the ghost that haunts her. I want to sit at your table while we dismantle her piece by piece. I want her to see me in the reflection of every glass she drinks from before she loses the right to breathe." Victor's grip tightened on my jaw. He wasn't looking at a victim. He was looking at a weapon. A slow, predatory smile touched his lips. He signaled to the guards to leave. "The clothes on your back are trash," he muttered, tossing a heavy velvet box onto the desk. "Inside is a different kind of life. If you wear it, you belong to the Volkov name. There is no resignation. There is no second betrayal." I flipped the latch. A black diamond serpent necklace stared back at me. I put it on, the cold stones resting against my throat like a collar. "We start with the Jersey shipments," I said, moving to his desk and opening his laptop without asking. "Clara thinks she inherited my logistics. She doesn't know I routed the high-value cargo through a shell company she can't see." Victor watched my fingers fly across the keys. The air in the room shifted. The hunter had found a partner. Suddenly, the monitors on the wall flickered. A live feed of the Thorn penthouse appeared. Clara was laughing, draped over the man who was supposed to be my fiancé. My fingers froze for a split second before I hit the enter key, blacking out their entire security grid. The mansion's alarms began to blare. Not the security alert, the perimeter breach. Victor pulled a sleek silver pistol from his waistband and handed it to me. "Your sister is faster than you thought," he said, checking the feed. A fleet of black SUVs was tearing up the driveway. "She didn't come for the money. She came to finish the job." I checked the magazine. "Good," I said, the weight of the gun feeling more natural than the emeralds ever had. "I hate waiting." Clara's mercenaries didn't use the door. The floor-to-ceiling glass of the study shattered inward in a rain of crystalline shards. I dove behind Victor's mahogany desk as a hail of lead chewed through the leather chairs. Victor was a blur of motion, firing with a terrifying rhythmic precision that turned the room into a graveyard in seconds. I popped up, my pulse drumming against my ears, and saw a man leveling a submachine gun at Victor's back. I didn't think. I squeezed the trigger. The kickback jolted my shoulder, and the man folded like a discarded suit. "Nice shot, Thorn," Victor grunted, reloading as he moved toward the hallway. We weren't just defending a house. We were moving through a kill zone. The hallway was a choke point. I grabbed a decorative flash grenade from a display case, a souvenir from Victor's arms-dealing days, and rolled it toward the stairs. The world turned white. The screams of the blinded men were cut short by the wet thud of Victor's blade. We reached the garage, the smell of burnt rubber and cordite thick in the air. The penthouse is a fortress now, I said, sliding into the passenger seat of an armored Bentley. She'll have the police on payroll within the hour. Victor slammed the car into gear, the tires screaming as we tore through the gates. The police don't matter when the city's power grid goes dark, he replied. He handed me a burner phone. A single message sat on the screen. The Thorn girl is at the docks. Section 4. It wasn't Clara. It was a decoy. My sister was smarter than I'd given her credit for. She was baiting us into a trap while she prepared to flee the country. If you believe that the person who builds the empire is the only one who deserves to rule it, hit the like button so this story reaches the people who know what it's like to be betrayed by their own blood. The docks were a labyrinth of rusted steel and the smell of salt and diesel. We moved through the shadows of the shipping containers, the silence heavy and suffocating. She's not here, I whispered, my eyes scanning the cranes. This is too quiet. A red laser dot appeared on Victor's chest. I tackled him just as the crack of a sniper rifle echoed off the metal. We rolled under a flatbed truck, the gravel scraping my skin raw. The crane, Victor hissed, pointing upward. I didn't wait for him to give an order. I scrambled up the ladder of the adjacent container, my breath coming in short, sharp stabs. From the top I saw her. Clara was standing in the control cabin of the massive crane, a headset on, looking down at the maze with a bored expression. She wasn't holding a gun, she was holding a joystick. The massive steel hook of the crane began to swing, a 3-ton wrecking ball aimed directly at the truck where Victor was pinned. I lunged across the gap, my fingers catching the edge of the crane's railing. I hauled myself up, my muscles screaming. Clara turned, her eyes widening as she saw the ghost standing on her platform. She didn't scream. She smiled. You always were the overachiever, Elena, she said, her thumb hovering over a red button. But empires are built on ruthlessness, not hard work. She pressed the button. The floor beneath me gave way. I plummeted 20 feet, landing in a pile of discarded cargo netting. My ankle screamed in protest, a hot flash of white light blinding me for a second. I looked up to see Clara descending the stairs, a compact pistol in her hand. The death certificate was just paperwork, she said, standing over me. This part is for the memories. She raised the gun. A shot rang out, but the bullet didn't hit me. Clara's gun flew from her hand, her index finger hanging by a thread of skin. Victor emerged from the fog, his face a mask of absolute cold. He didn't look at me. He looked at Clara. You tried to kill my partner in my own city, he said. He didn't fire again. He walked over and handed me his pistol. Finish it, Elena. Take back what's yours. I looked at my sister. She was clutching her hand, the emeralds on her neck splattered with red. She looked small. Pathetic. I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. I felt a hollow, aching void. The money is gone, Clara, I said, standing up on my one good leg. I transferred it to a trust for the people you fired the second you took over. You're not a CEO. You're a thief with no loot. I didn't pull the trigger. I turned to Victor. Let the police have her. A prison cell is much slower than a bullet. Victor's eyes flickered with something like respect. He signaled his men to wrap her up. We walked back to the Bentley as the sun began to bleed over the horizon. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion. You're a Volkov now, Victor said as we drove away from the flashing blue lights. That means the board members who helped her are going to come for you. They won't use guns. They'll use lawyers and poison. I leaned my head against the cool glass of the window. Let them, I said. I've already rewritten the bylaws. They don't have a company to protect anymore. If you think Elena proved that blood isn't thicker than a well-executed plan, leave a like so I know to tell more stories like this. The boardroom of Thorn Global smelled like stale coffee and panic. 12 men in $5,000 suits sat around the mahogany table, their eyes darting to the empty seat at the head. I walked in, leaning heavily on a silver-topped cane, with Viktor Volkov 2 steps behind me. The room went silent. The man to my right, Mr. Henderson, cleared his throat. Elena, we heard, there was an accident. We were under the impression that Clara is currently being processed at the Central Precinct, I interrupted, sitting in the head chair. I placed the black serpent necklace on the table. And every one of you who signed off on my death certificate is currently being investigated for conspiracy to commit murder. Henderson's face went the color of a fish belly. Now you have 2 choices. You can sign these resignation papers and forfeit your stock options to the Volkov Foundation, or you can wait for Victor to take you for a walk. One by one the pen scratched against the paper. It was a silent, bloodless execution. When the room was empty, I looked at the city skyline. I had my fortune back. I had the chair. But the penthouse felt like a tomb. Victor walked to the window, his reflection ghosting over the glass. "It's quiet," he said. "You don't like quiet." I stood up, my ankle throbbing. "I like results." But the board was just the beginning. Clara told me something before the police took her. She said she didn't come up with the plan herself. Someone coached her. Victor turned, his brow furrowed. "Who?" I pulled a small, crumpled note from my pocket. It had been in Clara's purse. It was a single address in the Swiss Alps and a signature I hadn't seen in 10 years. Our father. The man who supposedly died in a plane crash when we were teenagers. The man whose death gave us the initial Thorn inheritance. "He's alive," I whispered, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. "He staged his death to hide from the debt he owed your family, Victor. He used Clara to try and steal the fortune back so he could pay you off and come home." Victor's jaw tightened. The debt was a legend in the Volkov family, the one that started the war. "Then he's not in the Alps," Victor said, his voice dropping an octave. "He's in the city. He wouldn't leave his money to a girl he didn't trust." The realization hit me like a physical blow. The supposed fiancé. The man Clara was with in the penthouse. He wasn't a lover. He was a handler. I grabbed my coat. "We have to go to the safe house. Now." We tore through the city streets, the sense of urgency a physical weight. The safe house was a nondescript brownstone on the edge of the park. We didn't use the front door. We went through the basement. The air inside was stagnant. We moved through the kitchen, the floorboards creaking. In the living room, a man sat with his back to us, watching a flickering news report about the Thorn scandal. "You always were the smarter twin, Elena," he said without turning around. The voice was deeper, older, but unmistakable. He turned. My father looked like a ghost that had been well fed. He held a glass of bourbon, his expression one of mild disappointment. "You ruined a very expensive plan," he said, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. "Clara was supposed to be the face and I was supposed to be the ghost. Now, I have to be the executioner." He didn't reach for a gun. He reached for a remote. The walls of the room began to slide shut, reinforced steel plates sealing the exits. "This house is rigged with enough thermite to melt the foundation," he said, checking his watch. "You have 3 minutes to give me the offshore keys or we all go up together. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about people who risked everything for the truth." Victor didn't blink. He stepped in front of me, his hand on his weapon. "You owe my family 20 years of interest, Thorn," he said. "I'm not leaving without the principal." My father laughed, a dry, rattling sound. "The money is gone, Volkov. I spent it staying hidden. The Thorn global fortune was my retirement fund." I looked at the man who had raised me, the man I'd mourned for a decade. He wasn't a father. He was a parasite. "I didn't lock the accounts, Dad," I said, stepping out from behind Victor. "I deleted them. The money doesn't exist anymore. I burned the servers before I came to the docks." The blood drained from my father's face. For the first time he looked his age. You destroyed it? All of it?" I nodded. "I built it once. I can build it again. But you? You're just a man in a basement with a timer." The timer hit the 1-minute mark. The smell of something chemical began to seep into the room. My father scrambled for the steel door, his hands clawing at the smooth surface. He'd forgotten that he was the one who locked us in. Victor grabbed a heavy fire extinguisher from the wall and began to beat at the hinges of the floor grate. "Elena, help me." We hauled the grate up just as the first flicker of orange light licked the ceiling. We dropped into the crawlspace, the heat intensifying above us. We scrambled through the dirt and the spiders, the sound of the explosion muffled by the earth. We emerged 3 houses down, through a coal chute, coughing and covered in soot. The brownstone was a pillar of fire against the night sky. I sat on the curb, watching the smoke rise. Victor sat beside me, his suit ruined, his face smeared with grease. He handed me a handkerchief. "You're a terrible CEO," he said, a faint smirk on his lips. "You keep destroying your assets." I wiped the soot from my face. Assets are replaceable. People aren't. We sat in silence as the fire trucks arrived. My father was gone. Clara was in a cell. The empire was a pile of ash. "So," Victor said, standing up and offering me a hand. "The Volkov Foundation has an opening for a director of operations. The pay is terrible, the hours are deadly, and the boss is a monster." I took his hand, pulling myself up. "Does the boss have a good logistics team?" Victor laughed, a genuine sound that echoed in the empty street. He does now. We walked toward the waiting Bentley. I didn't look back at the fire. I looked at the man beside me. I had lost my fortune, my sister, and my father. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't building someone else's dream. I was living my own. If this story broke your heart the way it broke mine, hit the like button so I know to tell more stories like this. 1 year later, the Thorn Volkov name was the most feared in the hemisphere. We didn't just deal in guns and gold, we dealt in information. I sat in my new office, a glass cube overlooking the harbor. My ankle still twinged when it rained, a reminder of the night I stopped being a victim. A man walked in, a new recruit. He looked nervous. "Miss Thorn? There's a woman here to see you. She says she's your sister." I looked at the black serpent necklace sitting on my desk. Clara had been released on a technicality. Money has a way of blurring the lines of justice. I stood up, smoothing my suit. "Show her in," I said. Clara walked in, looking older, her eyes devoid of the spark they used to have. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just looked at the chair I was sitting in. "You look like him," she whispered. I shook my head. "No, Clara. He was a ghost. I'm the one who stayed behind to keep the lights on." I handed her a small envelope. "A one-way ticket to a quiet town in the Midwest and a job at a library. It's not an empire," I said. "But it's a life. Take it or don't. But if I see you in this city again, I won't call the police." Clara took the envelope and left without a word. I sat back down, the silence of the office finally feeling like peace. Victor walked in a moment later, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He didn't ask what she wanted. He just set a cup on my desk. "The Jersey shipments are ahead of schedule," he said. I smiled, taking a sip of the bitter, perfect coffee. "I know. I recalculated the routes this morning." We looked out at the city together. The fortune was back. The throne was secure. And the ghost of the Thorn family was finally laid to rest. I wasn't the sister who was stolen from. I was the woman who took it all back. If you believe that the best revenge is living a life your enemies can't touch, drop a like so the algorithm knows the story matters. The world is full of people who want to take what you've built. They'll tell you it's for your own good. They'll tell you they love you. But in the end, the only person you can trust is the one who's willing to stand in the fire with you. Victor and I weren't just partners, we were survivors. And in this city, that's the only kind of empire that lasts. As the sun set over the harbor, I realized that the black diamond serpent around my neck didn't feel like a collar anymore. It felt like armor. I closed the laptop, the glow of the data stream fading. The day was over. The work was done. And for the first time, the quiet didn't feel scary. It felt like home. The silence in the office was shattered by the high-pitched chirp of a secure line. Victor didn't reach for his coffee. He reached for the holstered weapon on the desk. I looked at the caller ID, a string of zeros that could only mean one thing. The technicality that got Clara out of prison wasn't a lawyer's trick. It was a trade. I pressed the speakerphone, my knuckles white as I gripped the edge of the mahogany desk. "Elena," the voice crackled, distorted by a heavy scrambler. "You thought the thermite took everything. But the Thorn legacy isn't in a bank account. It's in the black ledger, your father buried under the foundation of the Volkov refinery." I felt the air leave the room. The refinery wasn't just a business, it was the heart of Victor's operation, the place where all our shipments were processed. If my father had planted a ledger there, it wasn't just names, it was the map of every bribe, every murder, and every secret that kept the Volkov name alive. "The refinery is a fortress," I said, my voice projecting a calm I didn't feel. "You won't get within a mile of it." The caller laughed, a sound like dry leaves skittering on a grave. "I don't need to get close, Elena. I just need to tell the feds which pillar is hollow. You have 1 hour to meet me at the old mill. Bring the black serpent necklace or watch the refinery burn." Victor stood up, his shadow stretching across the glass walls like a predatory bird. "It's a trap," he growled. "He wants the necklace because the serpent's eyes aren't diamonds. They're micro-SD ports. He didn't lose the data in the fire, he lost the hardware to read it." I looked down at the snake resting against my skin. The cold metal suddenly felt like a ticking bomb. I didn't ask Victor for permission. I grabbed my leather jacket and checked the magazine on my suppressed pistol. He wants the hardware? Fine. I'll give it to him. 1 bullet at a time. The old mill was a skeleton of rotted wood and rusted iron sitting on the edge of the Black River. We didn't go in the front. Victor stayed in the tree line with a long-range rifle while I moved through the waist-high weeds, the scent of damp earth and decay filling my lungs. Inside, the only sound was the rhythmic thump-thump of water hitting the wheel. I reached the center of the floor, the moonlight illuminating a single chair. Sitting in it was Clara, her face bruised and her eyes wide with terror. She wasn't the caller. She was the bait. "Elena, run!" she screamed, her voice echoing off the rafters. I didn't run. I saw the red laser dot appear on her forehead. From the shadows of the upper loft, a figure emerged. It wasn't my father. It was Henderson, the board member I'd forced to resign. He wasn't wearing a suit anymore. He was wearing tactical gear, a scar running from his eye to his jaw where the fire had kissed him. "The ghost didn't die in the basement, Elena," Henderson spat, his finger tightening on the trigger. "He just sent me to finish the collection. Give me the necklace, or I'll see how much green your sister's eyes have left when they're cold." I unclasped the serpent, the weight of it leaving my neck. "You want the ledger? Here." I tossed the necklace onto the dusty floor. As Henderson leaned forward to grab it, a single crack echoed through the mill. The window behind him shattered as Victor's bullet took out the light fixture above Henderson's head, plunging us into absolute darkness. I lunged for Clara, tackling her behind a rotted timber as a spray of lead chewed through the wood above us. "Stay down," I roared. I didn't need light. I had spent months training in the manor's basement for this exact moment. I moved through the dark like a whisper, my boots silent on the moldy floorboards. I saw the muzzle flash of Henderson's gun and fired twice at the source. A grunt of pain followed by the sound of a body hitting the floor. I didn't stop. I reached the necklace and felt for the serpent's head. I didn't take it back. I clicked the hidden switch on the tail. A low-frequency hum began to vibrate through the floor, a signal jammer I'd installed the day I became director. Henderson's radio exploded in a screech of static, and the remote detonator in his pocket hissed and died. "The refinery is safe, Henderson," I said, my voice coming from a corner he didn't expect. "The ledger was never at the refinery. I moved it to a safe deposit box in Zurich 6 months ago. The only thing under that pillar is enough C4 to level this mill." I saw his silhouette scramble for the exit, but a shadow blocked his path. Victor stepped into the doorway, the moonlight reflecting off the steel of his barrel. Henderson looked from him to me, realizing he was trapped between the wolf and the ghost. "Wait. I can tell you where Thorn is," Henderson pleaded, his hands shaking. Victor didn't fire. He looked at me, the decision mine to make. I walked up to Henderson, the cold barrel of my pistol pressing into the soft skin under his chin. "My father is a dead man walking," I said. "And you? You're just a footnote." I didn't pull the trigger. I hit him with the butt of the gun, watching him slump into the dirt. If you believe that Elena proved she's the one who writes the rules now, hit the like button so her empire continues to rise. We walked out of the mill as the first rays of dawn touched the river. Clara followed us, shivering and silent. She didn't look at the necklace in my hand. She looked at the way Victor held my shoulder, not as a possession but as an equal. We reached the Bentley and I turned to her. "The ticket to the Midwest is still on the table, Clara. But if you ever let them use you as bait again, don't expect me to come for you." Clara nodded, a single tear tracing a path through the soot on her face. She got into the transport van and disappeared into the fog. Victor looked at the mill, then at me. "Zurich, Elena? Really?" I smiled, a rare, genuine spark in my eyes. "The ledger is actually in the bottom of that coffee tin on your desk, Victor. I just like to see them sweat." Victor laughed, the sound deep and resonant. He opened the car door for me. "You're a monster, Elena Thorne. I think I'm in love with you." I slid into the leather seat, the warmth of the car a welcome relief. "The feeling is mutual, Volkov. Now let's go home. We have a refinery to run." As we drove away, I looked at the black serpent in my palm. The world thought they could steal my fortune, my family, and my soul. They didn't realize that when you lose everything, you gain the power to reinvent yourself. I wasn't the sister who was stolen from. I was the architect of the new world. And in the dark, the only thing that shines is the steel in your soul. The Zurich trip was a feint. The old mill was a distraction. While the city slept, the real war was being fought in the one place my father never expected me to look. The Thorne family mausoleum. He didn't want the money, he wanted the birthright. As Victor and I stepped into the subterranean crypt, the air smelled of wet stone and century-old lilies. A single flashlight beam cut through the dark, illuminating a man sitting on the stone sarcophagus of my great-grandfather. My father didn't look like a king. He looked like a beggar in a tailored suit. "You shouldn't have come, Elena," he whispered, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "The ledger isn't a map of bribes. It's a confession. A confession that our family never owned Thorne Global. We stole it from the Volkovs in 1924. I felt Victor's body go rigid beside me. The century-long war wasn't about territory, it was about a debt of blood and theft that had never been settled. He's lying to save his skin, Victor growled, but he didn't raise his gun. He was looking at the ancient crest carved into the sarcophagus, a wolf and a serpent entwined. My father held out a folder of yellowed parchments. The serpent stole the wolf's den, Victor. I spent my life trying to keep that secret buried. But Elena, she has too much of your fire in her. She was always going to find the truth. I walked forward, taking the papers from my father's trembling hand. The ink was faded, but the signatures were clear. The merger that created the empire was a forgery. The fortune isn't mine, I said, the words heavy and cold. And it isn't Clara's. It belongs to the Volkovs. I looked at Victor, expecting to see the predator, the man who would take everything and leave me in the dirt. Instead, I saw a man who looked tired of the shadows. He took the papers from me and, without a word, pulled a gold lighter from his pocket. The flame flickered, then caught the edge of the parchment. We watched in silence as the truth turned to ash and fell to the stone floor. The past is a ghost, Elena, Victor said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous frequency. I don't want a debt from 1924. I want the woman standing in front of me in 2026. He turned his gaze to my father, his eyes turning back into the frozen lakes I feared. You have 5 minutes to leave this city. If I see your face again, I won't need a ledger to justify what I do to you. My father didn't wait. He vanished into the shadows of the crypt, a man who had lost his empire and his daughters to a truth that no longer mattered. We walked out of the mausoleum and into the crisp morning air. The black serpent necklace felt light against my skin for the first time. You burned the only leverage you had over me, I said, leaning against the cold stone of the entrance. Victor stepped into my space, his hand resting on the hilt of his cane. I didn't burn leverage, Elena. I burned a cage. Now you're not a thorn and I'm not just a Volkov. We're just the people who run this city. If you believe that some secrets are better left in the ashes, hit the like button so Elena and Victor can build their new world. The transition was seamless. The board was replaced by people who valued loyalty over pedigrees. Clara sent a postcard from a small town in Iowa. She was working in a bookstore, her hands finally clean of the ink of corporate greed. And as for the ghost? He was spotted once in a casino in Macau, a man playing with pennies in a world of giants. I sat in the office of the Volkovthorn refinery, looking at a city that finally felt like it belonged to me. I wasn't the sister who was stolen from. I wasn't the daughter of a liar. I was the architect of a legacy that didn't need a forgery to survive. Victor walked in, tossing a new set of keys onto my desk. The Jersey shipments are 10% ahead of projection, he said with a smirk. I smiled, picking up the keys. Only 10%? We'll have to work on that tonight. We walked out together, the wolf and the serpent, moving through a world that finally knew who was in charge. The revenge was complete. The truth was buried. And in the dark, the only thing that shines is the steel in your soul.